Good evening. This January 19th open meeting of the Conservation Commission is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For this meeting, the Conservation Commission is convening by Zoom as posted on the agenda, identifying how the public may join. Please note that the meeting is being recorded and that attendees are participating by video and or telephone conference. Meeting materials were provided to the committee prior to the meeting for review. Applicants or their representatives may be called upon to speak, and if needed, share information to the screen. Please state your intention to do so after you've been called. Permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. The chair will introduce the speaker on the agenda. If they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, question, or motion. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute yourself when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. Please be aware that video participants can see you and that you should take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. Committee members should be called upon in first name alphabetical order to ease the process. If committee members wish to engage with each other, please do so through the chair. After committee members have spoken, the chair will afford the public comment as follows. The chair will seek questions through the raise hand function. For video conference participants, this function can be accessed by clicking on the participants button. I lost my page. Okay. Option listed in the menu below the photo gallery. The window will open and display on the right. On the bottom of this participant area, you will see the list of phone or video participants, and on the bottom, you will see the ability to click on a button to raise hand. Please ensure your name is displayed. List your name, address, and then your question. Telephone participants can use their phone's keypad while in a Zoom meeting to raise their hand by hitting *9. The chair will then seek questions from the public that hit the raise hand button in the order of which they are listed. The participant will be called on to identify their name and address and then their question. The chair will afford the applicant or their representative the opportunity to reply. Your hand will be lowered when you have been given the floor for your questions. The board will continue down the list of those in the raise hand column and again afford the applicant or rep an opportunity to speak. Should there be a physical or electronic submittal of questions or concerns, they will be read for the record, and again, the applicant or rep will be afforded the opportunity to speak if the issues raised have not yet been addressed. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call. And yeah, we're good. All right. And do we have everybody here? I saw Ben, I see Dan. I'm here. There's Kevin, there's Peter, there's Bill Lord.
Mary.
Where's Mary?
Brian, I think you have to do that whole procedure again. Your audio is breaking up a little bit. I'm kidding, but you may need to call in. You may need to call in though. It was pretty hard to understand at times.
Mary's going to be about 15, 20 minutes late. She has another appointment she went to, so she said she'd be about 15 minutes late.
Well, then let's get started on this, and I will fix my phone to get back on. Yeah, let's get started. We've got Town of Newbury, 14th Street, DP number not yet assigned, a continued NOI to improve the right-of-way and construct an emergency access driveway. Hit it. Who's up, Bill?
That's going to be, it was going to be a request to be continued till the February meeting. We're only having one meeting in February. It's going to be February 16th is a regular scheduled meeting. So if you wanted to make this a special meeting like we have been doing, just to deal with this particular project, I would suggest February 23rd would be probably the appropriate date to pick for the continuance. I believe they're also going to the selectmen's meeting next Tuesday to discuss alternative route. My understanding from town council. I spoke with her earlier this week.
Okay. Is there anybody here about that? Or are we just continuing with nothing much to talk about and nobody to speak on it?
Steve Manchin has his hand up.
Yeah. Do we? Sorry, I'm distracted. Here, Ben.
If we allow him to speak, he can speak on. He can speak on, I guess, the continuance, but really shouldn't be talking about the actual project itself, since the applicant's not here and they've asked for continuance.
The applicant is here.
Tom Hughes is actually here for a different project, but he's.
Oh, okay, my fault. I agree.
I don't think he's here.
Yeah, I just want to note, I'm only part of the project team and the entire project team's not here, so we can't really discuss things of substance.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I got my audio back. Is this better?
Yes, it is, Brian. I'll sign off and let you run the meeting now.
All right, so Steve, that being said, you know, there's nothing that we can sort of talk about in a substantial way. But you know, if you've got some questions, let's see what they are, and if it feels like something we shouldn't engage with, then we'll let you know.
Sure, and I appreciate the chance to ask a question, and I fully appreciate that you may not be able to address it. But I noted that you said there was not a DEP file number or a new DEP file number on hand. So I'm just wondering, what DEP file number project are we talking about? An old one, or what is it that we're talking about?
Yeah, that question we can engage with. As far as I know, when we don't have a number as of when this meeting was posted, but Bill, did that change?
It has not changed yet. I believe they're waiting to refile or file the revised plans, which are in the works. Still have not been completely, as far as I know. I don't have a copy of them yet, so I have asked for them as soon as they're ready, and I don't have a copy yet, so I assume they're not ready yet.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. All right. So then, with that being covered, I guess we'll just do a roll call to punt to what'd you say, Bill? You want to do the 23rd? Do we want to talk, or do you want to do this as just a regular thing again?
It's up to the commission.
Do we think it's going to continue again, or are we going to actually have a substantial meeting?
That I'd have to have something, I'd say early February. So I think they wanted to wait until the later in February as possible, so they would have something and get it ready for us so that we could discuss it. So, okay. And it might take a while because I believe it's going to be a revised plan. It's going to be an alternative location, so it might bring in a lot of comments. So
okay.
All right. Anybody else have any thoughts on the question?
Sounds like the 23rd.
No. All right. Yeah. So let's do that, Bill. We can pencil that in so that if we need it, it's on the calendar, and if for some reason if we don't need it, we can always scratch it.
No, we have to at least have the meeting and continue it.
Motion to continue to.
Well, we can continue to the 14th, right? Or whatever the normal date is.
Motion.
Yeah, normal.
Yeah.
We could continue to the 16th or the 23rd. I think the applicant would probably prefer the 23rd to give them a little more time just to make sure everything's ready. I don't want to. I'm hoping that we will actually have some plan to look at by the 23rd.
Motion to continue to the 23rd of February.
That kind of,
Seconded.
Yeah.
We have a motion and seconded.
All
Time for a roll
right,
call
let's
vote.
roll it. Well, Ben, you're first on line today, right?
Yes.
You go. Yeah. And then who else we have? We have Dan's here. Daniel.
you got Bill.
All right. And then who's my next in alphabetical? We have Kevin.
Yes.
No, we have Bill Lord. I skipped Bill Lord. Oh, I knew I was doing this wrong alphabetically. I'll come back to you, Bill. Kevin, it's still your turn.
Public
Yes.
school.
Yes. Yes.
And Peter.
Yes, thank you.
All right. And Bill, we'll come back to you now.
Yes.
Okay, great. I'll vote affirmatively as well. All right, good. That's all done. What is next?
Hello.
Ooh, hi, sorry.
I'm sorry. I had a quick question. Jim Stewart, 22 Old Point, and I can't get on the computer because of the glitch. So I just want to confirm, so I can tell our consultants, it's February 23rd, and can I assume it's at the normal time, 7 p.m. is the continue?
Yeah, 7 p.m. We need to add that at the times when we do these. Yes, 7 p.m.
7 p.m. 23rd. Thank you very much.
All right. So anybody else while we're, nope. Okay. So what do we have next? We have Joseph Bavaro, 3 Newburyport Turnpike, DEP number 050-1336. A continued NOI to construct a residential/retail building with a parking area. All right. Bill Holt, you want to go over the updates?
Well, the updates are a revised planting plan, the bioretention area. And they sent recently, it was actually sent last night, but I got it this morning. And I forward you a copy of the 8.5 by 11 sketch with a planting table attached to it. I think TJ Melvin is the applicant's engineer. He's present. I made him a co-host. If he wants to share and explain the changes, that would probably be best for the commission to understand what was done.
Yeah. TJ, I know I've been the one sort of poking you about this, but I want to be, if you don't mind, try not to speak to me, because I want to make sure that everybody else sort of understands it too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, go for it. The floor is yours.
TJ Melvin with Millennium Engineering on behalf of the applicant. So as you mentioned, we kind of scrapped our whole original planting list that we had. We selected plants that were all native species, and sorry, upon further discussion with our wetland consultant, one of the primary functions of this is to remove sediment and any other leaf litter, anything else that can get into it. And as part of that, the mulch from time to time needs to be removed and replaced, or at least raked. So that's the reason for the decrease in the density from what was originally shown. And I believe all the plants that are shown here make sense in their location. We actually had Tom Hughes consult with us on creating the plant list. And as requested yesterday, we had added the wetland code for each of the plants, and just added a note along the bottom that all the plants listed above are native.
Hey, Bill, any way you can enlarge that, enlarge the picture you have on the screen?
That's TJ would have to be able. Yep, there we go.
All right. Oh, yeah, a little bit larger.
Do you want to see the table more or the plan view?
Thank you.
Are you looking more at the table or the plan view? Because it's kind of cut off.
Also, who was that? Can we just get the name and intro for the record?
Leslie Matthews, 111 Main Street, Planning Board.
Awesome, thank you. All right, TJ, where were you?
That was pretty much it. That we had, like I said, revised all the plants out of the wetland code, and just put a note that says that all the above specified, plants are native.
Okay, cool. Does anybody have any comments for TJ on this one? Ben, Bill, Dan, etc.
I like that planting list.
Going once.
I like the planting list, that's all.
Yeah, no, this is TJ, I appreciate this. This is, much better from my perspective. So, I'm content. Peter, nothing from you. Kevin, nothing from you, right? Okay. So Bill Holt, that was the last thing on this one, right? We didn't have any other hanging issues that I recall.
Nope, I think that was the only thing you asked for was the revised list for only native plants. So I think everything else was addressed.
Excellent. Okay, so then barring any other comments, either from the board or any hands up from our gathered guests this evening, we're ready to have a motion on this one, it seems like. Bill Holt, did we have any conditions that we talked about that were special in any of the past meetings?
I don't have any written down, so I don't think we had anything that was special. So I can't. I don't think so.
No, I'm
We
not
had just the
recalling any
standard
either. I'm
ones.
just double checking. Yeah. So unless anybody else on the board remembers something we said, this is just a boilerplate OOC and the plans.
My recollection
Right.
was that, is that we had a number of plan revisions and they're kind of where we want them now. So I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that the project be approved as proposed.
I can second that.
All right. First and second. Thank you. All right. Roll call. Benjamin,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Daniel, Kevin,
Yes.
and Peter.
Yes.
I'm also going to vote in the affirmative. All right. So, and we don't have, I'm still not seeing any hands up. I'm not seeing any comments coming in. Oh, wait, TJ, you have your hand up, TJ.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. I just assumed that you guys will want a revised set with that planting plan added back to the detail sheet.
Yeah,
Okay.
just exactly. Yeah, swing that back in. The way it is the right way.
Okay.
Yeah, and then TJ, do you want the script about time and appeals and all that, or I presume you know all that already?
No, yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So in that case, looks like we're good on this. We can keep moving. All right. Thanks, TJ.
Great. Thank you.
All right. So moving right along, we have Christine Colstring at 1 Plumbush Downs, DEP 050-1332, on amended NOI to incorporate salt marsh restoration and upland landscaping into the order of conditions, allowing the replacement of an existing single-family home and associated site work. All right. Let's see, Bill, do you want to lead or you want to let Tom lead on this one?
I'm going to let Tom take it. I gave him co-host so he can share his screen if he'd like to and explain the changes and maybe I'd like to ask if he has updates on the status with DEP as well, because it's actually under the appeal of DEP. We need to have them remand it back to us before we can actually vote on it. So just one.
Yeah, actually, so let me first share my
I'll
screen.
let Tom take over now.
Let me share my screen. Let's see, why can't I see it? Here we go. There we go. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
Okay, so first of all, on the status with DEP, DEP reviewed the amendment and sent me a one-sentence comment, which was put the planting plan, the narrative part of it, into a separate document so it can be cited in an order of conditions. So I did that. You guys got a copy of that, which I'll show you in a second. And then I sent that into DEP to make sure that they're good with it. But this is basically the plan. We're looking at approximately 1,600 plugs in the salt marsh. We'll know the actual number when the house is removed. And then we've got, you know, like some simple bayberry and Virginia rose going in the upland, on the upland side of the split rail fence, and then some panic grass and Indian grass that would be in the area under the building right near the marsh edge. Basically, because under that building, we suspect there's some upland and some marsh. So, and the idea is this is all going to be, you know, the mix of these will be decided by a wetland scientist after demo to figure out exactly how much of each. But it's going to be heavily Spartina, alterniflora, and the rest of them are going to be kind of a minor component that kind of blends in. As we get into the higher areas, we would use more switchgrass and more marsh elder. But anyhow, so this is kind of what DEP asked us to put together. We put it together, but we haven't heard back the affirmative that they are absolutely 100% good with it. However, I'm comfortable enough with where we are, since that was the only comment they had, to ask, you know, after I get any feedback from you guys, ask if you would be willing to not close the hearing, but ask Bill to prepare a draft amended order for the next meeting. The way this works in procedurally, the way this works is DEP will tell us things are good. Then you guys have to issue an amendment. The amendment has to go to DEP, and then DEP, after reviewing the amendment, withdraws their appeal, and then the amendment becomes valid. The amendment isn't technically valid until DEP makes a withdrawal. But I don't want you guys to issue an amendment until I have absolute certainty that DEP is going to sign off on it. So, you know, if we can continue this to the 26th, have Bill prepare the draft. That way, if DEP wants to see the draft before the meeting, it could be available. And then we would look to close this out at the next meeting, have DEP withdraw, and then my client can move forward with demolition and construction. And for those of you guys who didn't hear, the structure did suffer from a fire this last weekend. It is still standing. The building inspector has not yet ordered it to be taken down, but it would be good to resolve this quickly.
Okay, thank you. Any questions going around the horn? Ben, Dan, Bill, Kevin, Peter.
I wasn't able to make the second meeting with Mary, but I would be interested to know if she had anything that she felt was important from her site visit.
Yeah, she suggested, I don't know if she's on yet, but she suggested a couple of the other things, the seaside goldenrod, the switchgrass, the marsh elder were all out of discussions with Mary. She does a lot more salt marsh restoration work more frequently than I do. And so it was really valuable getting her input. So it was a really worthwhile site visit.
I can add one thing, because Mary sent me an email about an hour ago when she told me she wasn't going to be here. I don't think she's here yet, but so I'll just tell you what her comment was. She said that Indian grass, she had never used that before, and she was wondering if it was salt tolerant. She didn't think it was. So
it is a salt tolerant native, but it doesn't like to be wet. So it's more for the higher area. Deal with the occasional, king tide flood, with a storm, but it really isn't something that I would put right down in the marsh. And I'm open to change on that as well. These were just things that I did find that were available out there. And Mary also talked about the possibility of using a seed mix. I just haven't had enough time to really research a good seed mix. So down the road, we could potentially come back and look to incorporate that in lieu of some of the plugs. But if we did do the seed mix, one of the things Mary and I talked about is you'd have to do it during a real low tide cycle. And we'd have to use something like a jute fabric to hold the seed in place so it didn't wash before it took. I do generally like the idea of using seed better than plugs, only because you don't get the hair plugs for men kind of look. You get a fuller growth. But over time, I think Mary and I both also agreed that the vegetation all around that structure is so, healthy and dense that it's going to probably move in on its own anyway.
Okay, that sounds reasonable. The, in your discussion with your client, the Indian grass thing, if you're comfortable sort of testing the tides and seeing how often that thing gets wet, that seems like something that would, I'd be a little bit nervous about it because, why not be? But I'll leave that in your court. The one question I do have about the salt marsh restoration plantings, you've got 2-inch plugs, you've got the 4 species, and you've got 1,600 plugs, give or take.
Yeah.
Give or take, do you know the ratios that you'd be going for? Like 80% cordgrass, 10% goldenrod, something in that vein?
I think we're looking at goldenrod being kind of a minor component, so 10 to 20% of the plantings. But the way I look at doing it, and so if we go back to this plan, in this area here, there are some low spots, right, that seem to come in from that area where the deck is, and that's going to be more sort of pure salt marsh grasses, right? And then as we get up in here, it starts to get higher, and that's where I would start working in a little bit more of the seaside goldenrod, and then get into switchgrass as we get a little bit higher, trying to kind of look at where these plants are on either side in similar elevations and trying to match that. And so once the building is down, then we would kind of come up with the overall list, and it wouldn't be a distinct line between plant species. We essentially start decreasing certain species and increasing others so that there's overlap. And then as we monitor for the first year, if we find that one species is doing better than another in a certain area, we may not replace it with whatever dies. We would replace it with the species that's doing well. So it's, but I would say probably 80% are going to be, 80% are going to be like the cordgrass and maybe the switchgrass as we get higher. And then the marsh elder and the goldenrod to be sort of more minor components of those. And then as we get above elevation 6.1 or 6-ish, that's the highest spring tide elevation. That's where we'd start bringing in the panic grass and the Indian grass. And again, still with some overlap. So that, because you get marsh grasses that grow a little bit outside the marsh, and you get, some of the upland stuff gets in that range. So we just want to have enough overlap and interweaving of these species so that what likes to grow in certain areas is going to do well, and what doesn't is going to struggle a bit and get taken over by the others.
Yeah, no, I take your points. The thing I was just thinking was that, this project has gotten to this point just because of the level of detail that was desired, and maybe adding in that extra level it's not something that I'm going to say I need or I necessarily want, but if that's something that maybe might be helpful further up the food chain, just an idea.
Yeah, I think for right now, because I fully expect that what's going to happen is when we start doing the planting is going to be springtime. And I'm going to be reaching out to suppliers and finding out what they've got. And there may be some juncus I want to throw in. There may be some carex or some other species that we may want to get in there, depending on what availability is. But this is at least a good starting point for where we're at. I could put in, I think if DEP gets back to me and says this thing's good, I'd like to just lock it in the way it is. But if they want changes, I can certainly, note that the goldenrod and marsh elder I see as more minor components of the overall planting.
Yeah. Like I said, it's not something I'm going to push you on, or just the thought crossed my mind.
Right.
So anyway, seeing that nobody else is raising their hands or chiming in, I'm just going to poke again. Anybody want to comment on this one? Going once, going twice. Okay. So then Tom has asked us to encourage Bill to get rolling on the paperwork. So do we want to discuss that on how people feel about Bill doing the paperwork a little bit faster so that it's ready to go? Or waiting for final DEP comment before Bill starts in on his end of the paperwork?
I can write a draft up. I think that'd be a good idea to get it going, and I can get it out to you and get it out to Tom. So DEP could probably also get a copy.
Yeah, because I think
The draft, make sure they're okay with it.
Yeah, the draft language of the order before, I think, is something that DEP had issue with as well. So I think if they had a chance to review it early.
Okay. So any commentary from the board? Going once, going twice. All right, I'll take that as a no. So then that being said, let's look. Anybody from the public for this one? Anybody else want to chime in? Not seeing any hands up on the side there.
Can we stop
Oh,
screen?
sorry.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks. Just want to clarify, this is there for the one Plum Bush Downs.
Right. One plum bush.
Hold on. All right, what are the DPW numbers, the DEP numbers for, is it 050-1332 as far as landscaping is concerned? Or
It's for the
am
whole-
I jumping the gun?
It's for the whole project.
A whole project. So there is a DEP number, correct? So, well,
Yes, it's
okay.
0501332, and that's for the whole thing, yeah.
All right, that's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Sure. Do you want to follow up? Is there any more to that you're curious about? I mean, we can
I
go
guess
through it.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's already been partially discussed, but the in-depth plantings that would go out there on how they would be most beneficial to that particular site.
Yeah, that has been covered, like you said, in a few ways. And as was just said, there was a site visit that Tom went on with one of the members of this commission who's got more experience than he does in salt marsh restoration. And so the suggestions she made about, the better plants to choose for that particular site, he has incorporated that advice. And so, from our perspective, as the commission, that's sort of, we're happy with that one.
And I only have one more question, and it's only because I was involved with the RecCom, and I came in late. So I was wondering if there had been a permit for 14th Street and a DEP number for 14th Street. Because I came in late on that. I mean, if you can't provide that for me now, I understand.
14th Street, the emergency access. Yeah, we're still waiting on the DEP number for that one.
Okay.
That meeting's been continued to.
That was my, that's my question.
Yeah, Ms. Matthews, that meeting's been continued to 7 p.m. on February 23rd.
All right. Attending too many meetings at once, I guess.
No problem.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
I see
All
Mary's
right.
here.
So then, did Mary show up?
Yep.
All good, thanks.
Thanks, Leslie. Hey, so Mary, we were just about to move on Tom's project. If you want to chime in anything at the end, we, in a manner of speaking, to cut it short, we liked your suggestions.
Is this the one on Plumbush?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I saw the new planting plan, and I didn't have any comments other than the Indian grass. I hadn't worked with that before. I don't know how flood tolerant it is or salt tolerant it is, but I know it's native. So that was my only comment was the Indian grass. I don't know about that one. So maybe Tom, if you have anything you can add about it. We talked about it.
Yeah, we talked briefly about it. It is salt tolerant. It actually can handle the salt spray and periodic flooding, but not regular. That would go above elevation like 6.1, which is the highest spring tide elevation. So it might get a king tide flood every once in a while, but and it should do fine. I just wanted something in the upland section under the structure. Once the structure comes out, I want some kind of low grass-like growth.
Okay.
Would blend
So
that
that would
in.
be plugs?
Yeah, that would be plugs.
Okay.
And we would do that with probably with intermixed with switchgrass, which also can do pretty well in dry areas. So.
Okay.
But I appreciate very much your time on the site. It's helpful.
No
I don't know if
problem.
you know, but it burned only a couple days later too.
I didn't know that. I haven't seen it since then.
Yeah, it's still standing, but it's charred.
Uh,
So we're hoping to hear back from DEP and close this out at the next meeting.
okay.
Yeah. So Mary, what we were just about to vote on was Bill getting the paperwork started up so that if and when we are provided with the paperwork we need to finish this off, Bill is ready to go, and Tom has his paperwork taken care of that much sooner.
Okay.
So yeah, anyone want to put a motion on the table? Come on, Dan. You always put motions on the table.
Kevin looks so eager. I will move to authorize Bill Holt to begin preparation on a draft amended order of conditions. I think that's what we're asking.
Should we add
Yeah, that's good
continuing to the
language.
16th or the 23rd?
We can continue it to 26th of this next Tuesday, likely, hopefully, if we get hit back from DEP before then.
I'm just thinking, should we do this as one motion or as two motions? It seems okay to do it as one, right?
So,
To continue and,
Okay,
have
and
the
add
paperwork
in, I will add in to continue until 7 PM on the 26th of January.
Nicely done. All right, let's roll call this. Benjamin,
Did we get a second? Did I miss it?
I
Second.
think Kevin seconded you.
All right, there we go.
Yeah.
Fully seconded and thirded, and I will say yes.
All right, and Bill.
Yes.
All right, and Daniel
Yes.
and Kevin,
yes.
Mary.
I don't think I'm eligible to vote on this one, so abstain or,
That's okay. I'm incorporating you into my roll call. I gotta keep my autopilot straight.
okay.
And Peter.
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. All right, Tom, we will see you next week.
Yep. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
All right, you too. So moving right along, we have no certificates of compliance. We have no extension permits. We have an enforcement order for 21 Cottage Road, Nathan Gray endorsement. All right, so what is going on, Bill Holt? Bring us up.
I sent you all a copy of what I issued to Nathan on, was last Friday, I believe it was. And I wanted to make sure you all were okay with what I put in the enforcement order. And if you are, or if you want changes, we can make the modifications. I did notice one typo that I corrected, and I inadvertently didn't send you items 7 through 11 on the first time around, so I resent it to you. And I just wanted to make sure those were all okay. If you want any of them to be omitted or anything revised, that would be fine. Just let me know and I can change them before we sign it and issue it formally. I'm hoping that we can get it signed on Saturday at the site walk, if that's possible. Do you want me to call it up, or do you want to?
Let's just go through. Did everybody get the chance to have a look at it? Good. Any commentary, any questions, any additions or subtractions you'd like Bill to make?
Is there any deadline for compliance with this? It just says as soon as practicable, but is there a deadline for doing the work?
I can add one. He has filed a notice of intent. He's revising it. My understanding, he's also going to be including a septic system repair. I think Tom Hughes is now representing him, or is going to be representing him for future meetings, and they're going to incorporate the septic repair system as well as the rest of the work in the revised notice of intent they're going to file. So we don't have a number yet, so likely we won't have a meeting on the 26th. We'll have to continue most likely. But
I'm not saying that. No, I'm not saying that we necessarily need one. The applicant seems to be very compliant, so you can always amend the enforcement order if you determine that they're not beginning as soon as practicable, which is how it's stated. So we have some flexibility with the enforcement order. So I think that's fine.
Okay.
Dan has a question.
Yeah, I just have so it seems like all this property is buffer zone, and I'm just sort of wondering how, are we content with removing stuff from the resource area and putting it in a jurisdictional area with no real plan until we get the order of conditions in place?
It has to be 25 feet away from the wetland boundary, which I'm not sure, has it been flagged, Bill?
yes, they have been flagged. Yep.
Okay.
And they're on the plan. I can, did I put that stipulation to be 25 feet away? If I didn't, I can
Yes.
add that.
No, you did. That's condition 8.
Okay. Still, I think it's a concern that, you know, it's just gonna be stuff piled up or something, you know, who knows? I would like to think that the notice of intent hearing would proceed quickly. You know, maybe before the septic thing, at least come back and explain what's going on.
Mhm.
Take,
So then maybe, Dan, you know, that's a good point, and maybe the way to address it would be, you know, in the enforcement order, just to get, you know, at least a thumbs up from Bill about his location selection.
I think I also add in the enforcement order that he would install erosion control. I
Yes.
added it. We actually added it to his sketch, his plan, and I referenced that he would.
Yes,
add
that's
that.
condition 9.
Yeah.
And that they notify you upon installation of the erosion controls for inspection and approval
Mhm.
prior to relocation of the structure.
So I can definitely.
Any other
yeah.
thoughts? Anybody else have anything? Because, I mean, those are good points. Anything else we need to cover? Okay. All right. So Bill, you can fix that up and tweak it
Bring it
and
with me on
bring it with you to the sidewalk.
Yep.
Okay.
Do you need to vote on it now? Vote to sign it?
We have to vote to approve it.
Yeah, we have to, right? Because, yeah, that's the way, yeah. Okay. So then let's do our roll call. Or do we need a motion? We need a motion first, don't we?
I make a motion to approve the enforcement order as written.
second,
Or as
Second.
amended? Do you want it as written, Mary, like on screen, or do you want it as written with our changes that
Did
we
we make
just had a
changes?
chat about?
I don't think we made any.
We didn't make any.
Okay.
No. So on this.
So the thing you said, we were gonna change some of the details. It's all right. All right, whatever. It's a motion to do them as written.
Second.
Did we see a second? All right, we got a second. All right, Bill? Oh, sorry, Ben.
Yep.
All right, Bill?
Yep.
Daniel?
yes,
Kevin?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes, thank you.
All right, and I'm also going to be in the affirmative. Great, so that's all sorted. And I didn't see any hands on the side. I don't see anybody here for that one. Nobody chiming in. So let's keep moving. What's next on our pile? Other business, the Great Meadow lease to Colby Farm update. Bill, this one's all you.
Okay. Well, I sent you all the information I could find on it to date. I did locate the state agreement with the town when the property was gifted to the town that put it under the Conservation Commission's management. I believe also puts it in the ownership of the Conservation Commission. So those documents I found one recorded lease that had some of the items that I'd asked Tracy to provide information on, like the certificate of insurance and the required forms that were mentioned in the original lease agreements. And the 2004 recorded one did have those items included with it. And she noted that she would make sure that all these lease requirements are met prior to it being recorded. I imagine the commission would want to see those as well before you sign it. There was discussion on William Colby, who had passed away, and per town council, the town administrator can amend the leasing agreement, and it will be under William Colby's wife's name. Question of who can sign it. The legal counsel had informed Tracy that the town administrator that the Conservation Commission would no longer need to sign it. That under the Town Administrators Act that came into play after the last lease, that town administrator would have power to authority to sign the lease. There's some debate on that, so I think we need to find out exactly who should be signing it. In the past, I see that both the selectmen and the Conservation Commission signed the one in 2004 that was recorded. And the current version only has the Conservation signing it. Again, there's some debate there as to who should be signing it. I kind of think it should be the Conservation Commission, but Town Council has a different opinion, so I think we need to kind of discuss that a little further. I think we might try to get a Zoom meeting with Tracy and Town Council. I think Brian wants to attend that as well to discuss that. There was a question on the Great Meadow Farm Subcommittee members. Dan had mentioned there was a couple that he knew of that it thinks they're no longer on the committee. I asked the town clerk. Town clerk has no record of the subcommittee ever existed prior to 1950, or since 1950. There's no record of any committee members ever having been sworn in, which is required. So if it was a subcommittee, it might not have been must have been a de facto subcommittee and not really a true one that was set up appropriately. As far as we can tell, it doesn't exist anymore. I asked town administrator to ask legal counsel if that could be removed. That reference to that committee, which is now defunct, if that could be removed from the document altogether. I think we'll get that answer soon. And some answers we haven't got yet, so just let you know what we're asking, what we hope to get for information. And as far as, I think there was talk about changing the dates of the first cut. I think we talked about it, but I'm not sure if anyone actually suggested a new date. Again, I think it's something that could be amended on the document. If the commission would like that to happen, they should pick a date or decide on a date and then vote on it. And we can advise the town administrators to make the desired change. I don't think she would have a problem with that. So, last note, we had an information request, a citizen information request about all documents pertaining to the Great Farm lease and property. I've compiled what I've given to you and trying to get a few more documents tomorrow. I actually have to get it to him by Thursday, so I will be sending that out to that abutter. I gave you a copy of his request just because he's asking for all the information, including revenues and expenditures, and a copy of that Massachusetts Newbury Cooperative Agreement, which is what I found online from 1983. So I'm going to get him what we have. That's all I can do, and tell him that what we don't have, I can't give him. So that'll be going out tomorrow or Thursday morning. And that's about it for now. I think we may want to table this again until we get a little more information on the ownership and who should be signing this document. If there's any questions, I'll try to answer them.
On the issue of
Yeah.
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brian.
No, I was just gonna go down the row alphabetically because I figured everyone's gonna have a comment on this. But yeah, I mean, Ben, anything on your mind?
I think that the only thing at this point that I'm really thinking about is the response to who signs it. My reading of the town council's response is that we don't have to sign it. The town administrator can, because the TA Act gives her the ability, or the town administrator, in this case it's a woman, the ability to do it. That doesn't mean that we should let the town administrator do it. It's under us. And I'm kind of a mind that, at least as currently constituted, this is something that we should be, I think we're in a good position to take care of. I don't know how other commission members feel about it, but I think that we're doing a good job interacting with it. And I know that there's the town open space committee, but there might be some better ways to also kind of wrap things like this into open space in town. And Dan, can you remind me, is it the Concom that has a deed or ownership over the property by the transfer station as well on the corner of Hay and Boston?
I've never researched that. I mean, I don't think it's like that. In this particular case, you know, at the time, it was clearly put under control of the Conservation Commission at the time. The other one there, no, I don't think there's any kind of, I mean, there's probably people that can have an opinion about that, but I don't think there's anything legal like there is in this case.
Gotcha. Okay. So anyways, my thought is that we should not necessarily just turn around and say, that's okay, we'll give up our signatory authority on this one. That's my initial reaction to when I read everything. And moving forward, we should figure out if we should properly incorporate a subcommittee or not.
Okay. All right. Bill Lord?
I agree with Ben on that one. And if the subcommittee is in there, we either got to take it out or reform it.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Okay. Daniel?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was one of the thoughts I had as well, was just, I don't think we can manage this property correctly unless there is some subcommittee. So I think trying to figure out how to do that, maybe contact, the only person I think is still living in town is Lee Bernier. And somebody might ask her if she's interested. And there's also the house right on the corner there that overlooks Great Meadow. Those people I've talked with in the past just to kind of find out how they thought things were going, and they might be consulted again. But having a committee is good. And I just wanted to mention a couple of other things that might help us kind of resolve how this all works. And that would be the town meeting vote when this property was accepted by the town. That I would think would be around. And I do believe at some point in time, there was a management plan written for the property, which is typical for, properties that are acquired in this fashion. And but I don't know if that's something that Bill can find or.
Take a look for it.
Yeah, that might explain a little bit. I do believe I've seen one. It kind of talks about the purpose being primarily for agriculture, to maintain that agricultural use. I think that would be good to see in terms of just as we move forward, how things go.
Okay. Good thoughts. Kevin, what's on your mind?
Well, one, I think Dan just volunteered himself to be on the subcommittee with the history that he just had there. And I had shared the same thoughts as Ben, but also Leslie looks like she has her hand raised or something. She'd like to say something, but might be pertinent and add more comments. And Leslie, you're muted.
Yeah. Well, hold on. Let's finish up with Mary and Peter first.
Okay.
So Kevin, you good?
Yep.
Mary.
I agree with everything that Ben and Dan have said. That makes a lot of sense to me. And the only thing I would add is that in terms of the date for cutting, for haying, my understanding is that July 15th is the minimum date for first cut for protection of grassland birds. And Mass Audubon has apparently a pretty good guidance document which recommends August 1st. So the later it's delayed, the better. But there's there is guidance that's available on that issue if you want to. I can probably dig it out.
Yeah, no, I think passing that along to Bill Holt would be useful, or, you know, because he seems to be assembling a file here. All right, well then, moving right along, Peter, what's on your mind?
I agree, and I value the comments that have been made, and I think the subcommittee is probably the best structure to help with the oversight. So I think that mechanism should be employed. And from what I look in the deed, it does look like this falls onto the Conservation Commission. So I think there has to be some sort of sign off on that. At least that's what the deed directs. So I would, you know, regardless of whatever acts there are.
Okay.
So it requires that. That's all I got. Thanks.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So Leslie, what's on your mind?
My first question is, if town administrator says that she can sign the lease, who is responsible for the cuttings? Does the town administrator decide who will be responsible for that? Because in the past, the leasee has gone in and done the cuttings and maintained the fields. Would that monies fall on the town as far as having to pay for the cuttings by having to hire out that? And the other thing is, I do agree. Concom, I think, should be in charge of the lease. That's their ownership as far as what what they do. And then I found a little information that I'm not sure, maybe somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I originally at the last meeting, it was said that the Great Meadow had been gifted by a family member that lived on the street, unnamed. But then it shows in 1984 that the town bought the property for $110,000 and that the state paid in the rest of that. Do you have any information on that?
Spoken correctly.
Correct me, please.
They sold it. I don't know if it was a bargain sale at that time or not, but they sold it to the town with state money involved as well. I thought it was a gift, and I was incorrect about that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that there might be confusion on the first point in that the town would not be the lessee; they'd be the lessor, and rather than having the Conservation Commission sign on behalf of the town administrator would sign. So the Colbys would still be responsible for everything. As far as maintenance and all of that.
So she would be like, the town administrator would sign instead of Mr. Colby's demise.
No, the town administrator would sign instead of the Conservation Commission.
Okay.
On behalf of the town.
On behalf of the town, leasing the property to Mrs. Colby.
And so she would be responsible for how it's been maintained over these past years.
She being Mrs. Colby.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
I can add one more thing, Brian, if you, that
Go ahead.
if there's state funding available, that it's possible that DCR has a file on this property as well, and any management plan may be in their files. So that would be one potential source.
See if I can contact them.
Yep.
Oh man, Bill, you're gonna have a book on this place by the end of this. All right, so then when do we want to come back to this? We've got a few questions. We've got a couple of things to iron out. Do we want to do this at the next regularly scheduled meeting? Do you want to do that? You want to skip a meeting since the next regular one is, next week?
I think we should. I would think we want to do like the February 16th meeting, which is the next regular meeting in February after the 26th. to get more time to get all this information together. Might take some time getting it all.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know that these questions are something that can be answered in a week. All right. That
Move to
sounds good to
continue
everybody else?
Yeah, move to continue to February 16th, 7 p.m.
We don't actually have to
Second.
continue
Second,
it, but but I'll put it on.
All right. I think I heard a second, right?
I think Bill's right. We don't need to.
You don't need to vote on it. I think we just need to, I'll put it on for the February 16th meeting as other business.
Great.
No.
There's no
Okay.
hearing for it, technically.
But I like the get-go, Kevin. Keep the things rolling.
That's right.
Moving right along, exactly. Just keep going. All right, well then, in that spirit, the next thing on our to-do list this evening, we have the bylaw amendment discussion. Ba-da-da-da-da. An hour later, the reason we made this meeting. All right, so then let's start this with Bill Holt. Let's go to you first, and you can give us any updates from your perspective. And then I'm going to suggest we have Mary sort of walk us through the edits on this one, because she did a very lovely job putting together the thoughts into a readable format. And then Ben and I maybe can go through some of our own commentary that we had for Mary's work, and then we can bring it back to the rest of the commission. Sound okay? Great, I see a thumb up. Thanks. All right, Bill Holt, why don't you start us off?
Well, I only have just minor edits, actually, for the most part. I read through it. There's a couple of typos and minor edits that need to be done. I'm looking at the marked up one, actually, not the one I sent out that was without the markups. I think if Mary went through the markup, I can just add my comments when we.
Well, here, Bill, actually, hold that thought. I was thinking more in the line of, like, you could sort of, for the record and on video, just be like, we've got this posted on the town website. We've jumped through all of our legal hoops in the right order. That's sort of more what I was thinking.
Okay.
We can get into the nitty gritty in a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, we do have it posted on. We posted it on the website. It's a draft version. It says draft on it. The subcommittee met appropriately through Zoom meetings that were posted. Copies of the draft went out to all the members individually. As far as I know, there was no discussion amongst the members. I was pretty clear on that they would only respond back to myself with any comments. Only received one comment from one of the members, which I did send out that piece of information, which was a compilation of abutting towns, setbacks and different guidelines, how they took jurisdiction on certain things. So I thought that was appropriate to send out to the rest of the members just to look at in terms of some extra information as you work through amending the bylaw. I think after this review, we want to do a final edit, repost it, and have one more final meeting on it. Maybe they could vote to send it to town council for review. The next step is to actually have a public hearing on it once the draft is complete, which we'd have to advertise, and then general public could make comments on and express their concerns if they have any. So that's the process. I think everything we've done so far has been in line with what's required. And so if you wanted to move on to reviewing what you actually have drafted, that would be my suggestion at this point.
Beautiful. Thank you, Bill. So
Can
then,
we
Mary,
screen
let's go
share
to
it?
you. You also.
Can we screen share the document?
Yes. Do you want to do it? You want me to have you, or you want me to do it, or?
You can do it.
Okay. Let me get it up first. Hold on.
And while this is going up, one reminder because I think that it's something that we always we had to talk our way through a lot for the rest of the commission and anybody else on the recording, is that the point of this is not to propose or encapsulate any new regulations, is to call out resource areas that we would then have regulations about. So this is just talking about, we're not looking for any specific actions in this or saying anything specific. Is that the best way to put it, Mary?
Well, I think that, you know, it should be pointed out that the town already has a wetland bylaw.
Yes.
And that it only applies to Plum Island, and it was required as part of the water and sewer project. And so there's a discontinuous or unequal protection of resources in to some extent in town, because part of the town is subject to additional regulations that aren't, the rest of the town is not subject to. And some of the, so that's one reason for the bylaw. The other is obviously because they're inland wetlands, not non-tidal wetlands that are subject to the State Wetland Protection Act. But there are, because the State Wetland Protection Act has some limitations in terms of the ability to protect that wetland and its associated buffer zones, especially, that a bylaw would be able to address more specifically. So the intention of this document is to establish the framework, the bylaw framework that would allow us to develop regulations for the protection of inland wetlands. It doesn't do anything, it doesn't change anything on Plum Island at all. All of those, the existing requirements, we're not able to change because they were required, and we are not adding to them or making any additional resource areas or anything. So this is just an attempt to add to the town's existing bylaw, similar to what Newburyport did, because they had a similar bylaw that was addressing their portion of Plum Island. So what I did was import language from a similar thing that Newburyport did, and some language from the Ipswich bylaw as well. And it basically just adds another category of resource protection, which is inland resources. The purposes of the act, of the bylaw remain the same. So this first section really is just regurgitating what the purpose of the Mass Wetland Protection Act is. It doesn't really affect what we're doing at all. Section A is just, you know, establishing what's protected under the state rules. Then section B is what are the interests that are protected under, that we want to have protected under the wetland bylaw. And all of these are already in there with the exception of everything that's in red. And so what we're doing is in section B, we're adding, instead of just Plum Island Barrier Beach, we're in the introduction to section B there, we're adding all coastal and inland wetlands. So wherever we reference, wherever the bylaw references the Plum Island Barrier Beach, it's been substituted with all coastal and inland wetlands. And then the purposes have been divided between, special purposes of the wetland bylaw have been subdivided into within coastal areas and within inland areas. And the coastal areas remain unchanged except for the addition of number 7 and 8, which was something that was discussed as potential additions in the previous discussion on this bylaw. So those are items we would want to decide whether to include. The Great Marsh Area of Critical Environmental Concern is, it only affects coastal areas, coastal wetlands for the most part. There may be some tiny areas of the ACEC that affect inland wetlands, but for the most part, it's the coastal wetlands. And the State Wetland Protection Act doesn't provide any specific performance standards for area of critical environmental concern, except if you're proposing to fill salt marsh or something, it triggers something, but it's not it really doesn't have any specific regulatory protection under the state rules. And then number 8 was the coastal resiliency from sea level rise. If that's something that we want to add as a potential interest for this the coastal resources, which seems to make sense. And I think a lot of towns are adding that purpose to their bylaws because of the obvious necessity now in looking at projects in terms of resiliency. So anybody have any questions about that first section?
No, and Mary, just to reiterate what I said before, I think you did a really nice job making this readable, and as far as these sorts of things go, accessible. These bylaws are, they're built to confound, it seems, and I think you did a really nice job crafting and laying it all out.
Thanks. Well, so in terms of the 9 through 13, those are all up for grabs because, again, those are not something that, 9 is obviously to protect the purposes of the Wetland Protection Act. That's an obvious one.
Barry, before we go too far ahead, I just want to point out that number 8, I think, also ties importantly when we move this forward. If we keep 8 in, that ties into town MVP grants that we've been put in and gotten, right?
Yeah.
So it also brings the bylaw in line with all the town efforts through the municipal vulnerability grants.
Right. And it gives us the ability to just write some regulations that protect that address coastal resiliency. So that's
I just think it's been pointed out to me that it'd be wherever we can tie into current town efforts like MVP. That's a good thing.
Right. So
hey, let me just interrupt for a second. I'm going to step away for a minute. I'll come right back, but just keep going. I don't really have anything to add. I don't really right now have anything to contribute, but I will be right back.
Okay. Number 10, rare plant and animal species. We have, the state has a natural heritage and endangered species program. It requires a lot of very specific expertise to regulate, and we may not need to include this as a separate purpose because it's being handled specifically by a state agency. So that's just food for thought, whatever people think on that. It doesn't necessarily relate directly to wetland protection. So that's one potential downside on that. Agriculture, where agriculture may be occurring in or near wetlands, that there is some towns have that as a positive feature, that continued agricultural use is something that is being promoted as part of this wetland regulations, and allowing certain kinds of agriculture to occur within wetlands. The state has an agricultural exemption for certain agricultural activities in the Wetland Protection Act. The town may want to have something similar as well. We don't right now have that, so we rely entirely on the limited projects that are contained within the state Wetland Protection Act. Aquaculture, maybe this shouldn't be in the inland wetland areas because I don't think there's any freshwater aquaculture that is being proposed. I don't know if there's much aquaculture proposed in coastal areas in the town, but it seems like that might be in the wrong category there as I'm looking at it. And then promotion of carbon sequestration as an adaptation to climate change. That was something that was recommended as a potential to address, and that's something that we should talk about as how that fits in with our ability to regulate those things and through wetland protection regulation. So. And then, okay.
Mary, I just want to clarify so I understand a little bit better. Number 10 there, I find that, is that something that it's attractive to me because I think there's a lot of situations where you can have incomplete mapping or long periods of certification when it comes to natural heritage. And so it gives us a lot more flexibility if we ID rare species or rare habitats in the field on a site walk to act appropriately within the scope of the time permit, scope, the scope of like, how long we have to permit something, where it may be hard to go, you said you feel like it's somewhat redundant to some of the natural heritage stuff, but.
Well, I think we would be limited to only rare wetland species, so rare wetland plants and animals. I don't think we could include protection of all, upland rare plants as part of this.
No, I know, I'm not saying that. I'm just
Yeah.
saying that, I think that there's been situations where, we've looked at wetlands, or you've looked at wetlands, and you see something that heritage hasn't seen yet or doesn't know
Isn't
about.
mapped yet. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And so it gives us the ability to not have to be.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's one of the positives of having that in my
Yep.
mind, but I hope I'm not misinterpreting it. That's what
No, that's another way to look at it. So yeah, I think that's helpful. Mhm. That you might find something that's not mapped, and it wouldn't necessarily have the protection unless we had it under a local bylaw. So that, yes, that makes sense. So I guess we would ultimately we'd have to vote on what interests to include and not include in each of those categories. And similarly, for the next section on jurisdiction, basically says, we're gonna, all the resource areas that are regulated under the Wetland Protection Act are still regulated under this bylaw, as well as these following additional resource areas. So right now, vernal pools are only protected under the state rules if they occur in another resource area and if they're certified by natural heritage. So that opens the door, that gives you a lot of wiggle room for additional protection. Vernal pools could be protected whether or not they occur in a state regulated wetland. They could be regulated whether or not they actually are certified by natural heritage. We could provide regulations that establish what constitutes a vernal pool, what criteria would have to be met in order for it to be considered a regulated vernal pool. Some towns presume that pools are vernal pool habitat if they have certain, a certain amount of ponding for a certain duration, and they have a certain number of species that are present, or just the absence of fish. I think Boxford has one that just presumes that if it's a seasonal ponded area that doesn't have fish, that they presume it's vernal pool habitat unless proven otherwise. So there's lots of different ways of addressing that one. Isolated vegetated wetlands are areas that don't border on water bodies. Those isolated vegetated wetlands are only protected under the State Wetland Protection Act right now. If they have a minimum flood storage volume of 1/4 acre foot, which is about 10,000 square feet, 1 foot deep. So that's, any other wetlands smaller than that doesn't have any jurisdiction at all. So a lot of towns do have isolated vegetated wetlands that are maybe a minimum size of 5,000 square feet or so, and they don't have to have a minimum flood storage volume. They don't have to border on another stream or water body. So that's something to consider. The Great Marsh could be considered a separate, the Great Marsh ACEC could be considered a separate resource area. Or we could just keep it as an interest, like in the previous section. Just keep it as a separate sort of reason for protection. Or you can make it a separate standalone resource area on its own. And then land within 100 feet of these three resources, all, you know, a buffer zone to vernal pools, a buffer zone to isolated vegetated wetlands. You could consider a buffer zone for all these areas. That could be a separate resource area all by itself. Some towns have buffer zones as a resource area, not just a buffer zone. So, and then most of the rest of it, I think, if you scroll down, Bill, is just correcting language so it applies to coastal and inland areas.
Mhm.
And then, yeah, the regulated activities have to do with, trying to refresh my memory here. Yeah, this was cut and pasted from another bylaw. Yeah, so where I think the Plum Island section has a regulated activities section as well. This would just be the regulated activities that we would protect under the local bylaw. So I don't know if you want me to go through each one of these or you want to read them on your own.
I think we can read them on our own and get back
Yeah.
for the next meeting if
Yep.
there's any concerns. I think that was out of Ipswich, either Ipswich's or Rowley's, Mary. I can't.
I think it might have been Ipswich, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think we needed to have some kind of definition of what is being regulated. You know, what would be the kinds of activities that would trigger a review. And I don't know that there's too much more. That's the bulk of the changes were at the beginning. The rest of it, I think, is what's all existing language. That's all Plum Island redevelopment requirements.
There might
Yeah,
be.
that's all the existing bylaw. Oh, you could
Each-
update the flood zone. Yep, you
Yeah.
could update that. Or you could just revise or July 2nd, 1992, or most recent,
Yeah.
or something like that. Yeah, because
I
they're
actually
gonna.
I had a call on that last week that I used the 92 one. I said, no, I used the most current one.
Yeah, yeah.
So probably should just make that minor revision to
That's the
wording.
easy one to make. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. Okay. Yep.
Oops. Yeah.
Yeah, that's some potential language. Those are some potential definitions. If we decide to include vernal pool habitat, isolated vegetated wetlands, or Great Marsh ACEC as a separate resource area, that's some potential language for their description.
Let's say the same for the most part.
Yeah, that's 9. I just added that 95 4.1 as just a squeeze in between two sections to just say that we have the ability to provide regulations.
That's
Yep, that one just.
there.
There was can you scroll back up, Bill, for a second to 95-5? I think there's a typo I made a note of that didn't make it into here. In 2, right on the, we want to get rid of that. Is that a missed barrier beach we want to get rid of, Mary?
Which one is it?
95-5.2. Mitigating measures proposed that will allow the project to be conditioned so as to contribute to the protection of the wetland resource areas located.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it should be both. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Should be both barrier beach.
Yes.
Well, she just delete.
Located on, it should say in coastal and inland wetlands.
Guys, did I miss much?
We're half done.
Those are just applications. I added ANRAD because we don't right now have ANRAD in the bylaw. It only has notice of intent and RDAs. Okay, certified mail. Yeah, the bylaw right now just only allows certified mail return receipt requested, and DEP allows certificates of mailing as well. So seems since a lot of people don't even pick up their certified mail, it's just it's a lot easier to just send certificates of mailing because it goes direct.
Right. Pretty much all standard language there.
Yep. Let's see, what orders of condition shall expire 3 years after date of issuance of commission. I just changed may extend rather than shall. For up to 3 years, yeah.
So this is all language that's in there now. It's not changed.
Yes, yep, that's all the same. I didn't go through it with a fine tooth comb, so there may be other small adjustments that we might want to make.
Question? Mary, is some of the procedural stuff often in the regulations rather than in the?
Yes, because the town they just adopted the bylaw for the Plum Island and without separate regulations, they put them all together. So yes, some of that stuff is in here that would normally be in regulations. Makes it easier for us to do our job in a way because we don't have to write, we don't have to reinvent all those in a set of regulations.
It would give us a little easier way of changing our procedures, though. That's all.
Oh, yeah.
I just, from the reading, it just seemed like even Newburyport has some of the how to file, and particularly they have different procedures for Plum Island than they do for the rest of the.
Yep.
I don't know. It makes everything more complicated. If it's here, it's here. That's good, I guess.
Yeah. The only, the trick is if we pull it out and, I don't know, then.
I mean, I think there could certainly be more, involved procedures for Plum Island, including down into the granular, like if it's in a flood zone, you got to have a topographical survey or,
right.
Stuff like that, that we don't have now.
Could that be in the regulations versus here?
Yeah, oh, that's up. I don't know. I'm just sort of blabbing away here. That's all.
I thought it was actually some section on that.
So the last section is just, whether this is optional too, whether we want, to exempt projects that were filed before a certain date, whatever date is going to be the effective date, I guess, of the bylaw that if it gets adopted by town meeting. And the second paragraph is whether or not we want to have projects be consistent with the exemptions under the Wetland Protection Act. So I guess maybe I need to provide those for you so you know what the exemptions are. There are some exemptions for public projects. So there's some exemptions for utility work in roadways and things like that. So I can provide you with a list of those.
I think agriculture would be in there somewhere, right?
There is an agricultural exemption. Yep.
Does anyone want me to go back or to any other parts or?
Well, that's good if nobody has anything to say.
Stop
Good sign.
There we go.
And one
All
thing
right.
to do would be to, we could do a little, like, I don't know, a poll or a survey or something, some kind of questionnaire where we listed the decision points and everybody could sort of check off yes or no, or how they felt about it. Might be
Yeah.
an efficient way of doing that.
Does anybody want to
think
do
like
it
a monkey
Mary's
survey,
way, or
Mary?
does anyone want to talk some of the points a little more?
Peter
Like,
was saying
Mary,
something.
like for example, oh, sorry, go ahead, Kevin.
I was saying Peter was trying to say something. I couldn't hear him.
It was to Mary's comment about a survey. Mary, were we thinking like a monkey survey for the modifications and just people yes, no, yes, no, yes, no? That sort of a response?
Something like that. Yeah.
I mean, just from a quick read, I mean, the modifications look pretty comprehensive and very thoughtful as to what's not in place and what needs to be in place. So I think it's great guidance. But if you like point by point, then the commission can, if that's what you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, I think even just making it a Google Doc and having everybody weigh in on it, if we're able to do that and through open meeting, if it goes directly back to Bill and not to everybody else. You could just edit it directly with your comments and then he can assemble the comments. And
Well, let's try to shorten that list. I think, you're onto something there, Mary, but I think at the same time, I think we might be able to make it a short list. Are there, for example, a decision point might be those, numbers 7 through 13 and the purposes, whether or not to keep one or all of them or whatnot. Does anybody want to sort of volunteer that they have a point that they think we should vote on, or do we want to vote on this mass? I mean, how do we list this out? If there's a way, instead of doing a survey monkey for 15 decision points, is there a way to shorten this so that we know we're all in agreement on some things and there are some other things that we're not all in agreement on?
Dan?
I think, for me, I have some questions, and I think these are the major decision points, and that's the size of the buffer zones for the various not resource areas, but for the buffer zones of the resource areas that we're calling out now, the vernal pool habitat, isolated vegetative, HCEC, is 100 feet enough for certain things? Is 5,000 square feet too much for the isolated wetland? To me, those are questions that maybe you guys you can just say, hey, we've been all through this, and this is what we recommend, and if that was the case, I'd go with it. But there's certainly, Mary called out the things that there's some room to make some changes.
Right.
And
Every time we're, obviously, if we add a resource area that's not protected under the state rules now, we're going to add it. That's, there's potential pushback on that. So.
Yeah.
Um,
I just think take for isolated vegetated wetland. I mean, I just think 5,000 is too high. That unless you have a very robust method of doing the vernal pool protection apart from isolated vegetated wetlands. So those two are sort of linked in some way. It's for ACEC 100 feet. I keep it simple. I mean, Gloucester is crazy. I mean, they have 100 feet, and then they have 100 feet on top of that, another 100 feet.
150, yeah.
But that's coupled with some pretty stringent requirements in the regulations as well. But yeah, I mean, I think, let's see, what other ACEC, I think that was probably good in the bylaw. Yeah, I'd like to see some, maybe the buffer, 100-foot buffer on vernal pool is not enough. I mean, it seems like other towns have gone in excess of that. Maybe it's not. I think 100 foot is good, but I'm concerned about isolated and how that's maybe the biggest question I have. 5,000 versus, many towns say any wetland, we have jurisdiction.
So would it maybe be better to have everybody review these and sort of indicate where they have concerns on the decision points, and the ones they don't, if no one has, if the 13 items, no one's going to add or anything or subtract anything, or 10 of them they have no problems with, but there's 3 that some people have issues with, and someone wants to add 1 or 2, I can put it together and say for the next meeting, everybody agrees on these 10. There's no issues with these. These 3 seem to be a little bit of an issue with some of the members, so you might want to discuss it further. And a couple of members wanted to add this or this. And that way you have an idea where you agree and where you may have to make a decision on when you discuss it more. We seem to be bouncing around a little bit right now, and I think maybe if we could go with top down again one more time through it after everybody tells me what they all like, and then what they don't like or what they have concerns with, we may be able to just concentrate on those areas where there's concerns and not have to spend time on 10 items that we all agree on. So that's kind of what I was thinking, but I don't.
Do we have chat? Do we have the chat on the side of this thing? I don't see it on mine. Is that disabled?
Chat's disabled with the stuff.
Might have been.
Are we allowed to turn that on in the middle of a meeting?
No, I think the chat is disabled on the top from the town.
Just outright.
Right.
Yeah,
I'd have to find out. Yeah.
Just because I was thinking of maybe we could multitask if we go back through the list and sort of if Mary sort of guided us through the decision points, then we could all sort of write to Bill and say decision point 1, I want to talk about it, 2, or, and so we could in live meeting send him information about what we feel. And then he can assemble that in short order and get it back to us, in time for the next meeting.
I've got about 15 minutes.
Of these. Okay. I don't know. Does that idea sound too complicated, too simple? If we email Bill or sort of if we multitask a little bit, or do you want to do this sort of tomorrow and read it again and have more time and go over it 2 or 3 times, at your leisure, and maybe we put a deadline of like Friday. Tell Bill something.
I think that's a good. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bill.
I was just wondering when you want to have this back on the agenda. Is it going to be for the 26th, or are you going to have it for the February meeting?
I personally think that we can move the ball forward on something, at least for the 26th. I don't know that we'd be done or complete, but we can, move something forward. And I think that something we can move forward would be these decision points and find out how many of them we actually have to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think possibly if you review it and say, send me back the ones you have comments on or concerns on. If any one person has a comment on one of them, we can have that be a talking point at the next meeting and let you know that
Right.
that's one of the items that we need to talk about.
Right. And I know I missed most of it, but maybe, if you guys want to go through it again and just sort of focus on those decision points, if we run through the list again and, I don't know, like Mary says, choice A, choice B, choice A, choice B, to help sort of make it a clear decision between what you want or what you don't want or what you could have or what you might choose against. I don't know. I'm just trying to make use of the time while we're all here to cover these points.
Right. Do you want me to put it back up again?
At the same time, if you guys would all rather take it home and chew on it for a bit, that's fine too. I just would like to have something, to talk about next week, even if it's only a little bit.
I think it'd be helpful to go back through one more time and just so we know what those main
Yep.
I'll share it.
decision points are. Not.
Yep. Back up to the top. Yep.
Okay. So yeah, Mary, why don't you do that? Just take the points you think of as the decision-making points,
Sure.
and we'll go through them, and everyone can sort of have your thoughts to exit on.
Okay. So if we just scroll down then to 95-1B, and then we can discuss numbers 7 and 8 there. Do we want to include as a special purpose of the bylaw the protection of the Great Marsh ACEC and the protection of, I don't know if we want to word this differently, but protection of coastal resiliency from sea level rise. That's probably worded very inartfully, but to somehow incorporate the protection of coastal resilience as a purpose of wetlands. Primarily in that respect, we're talking about salt marsh. We're talking about the ability of salt marsh to provide coastal resiliency. So recognizing that it's just somehow to recognize sea level rise as an interest of this bylaw. And that allows us to then go ahead and address it in some way through regulation.
Right. And the other thing too, as we go through this, let's just try to ask Mary questions and let's sort of keep our opinions to ourselves for now and just keep it sort of on task for what is the decision-making point. So I don't know. I don't know if that'll be helpful for shortening this, but yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Mary.
These two are just up or down. I think number 8 needs to be reworded so that it sounds, it makes a little more sense grammatically, but.
I think all you have to do is say provide instead of protect, just like as
Yes.
you had number 7.
Yeah. But I think those are just two up or down votes. Do you want to include those as purposes of the bylaw? It doesn't mean we have to take any action on them at all. It's just kind of placeholders for future regulations.
Okay. Roll on, Mary, roll on.
Okay. All right, then, and down below, within inland areas, I think, again, 9 is just, we're going to protect our wetlands and our local wetlands for all the same purposes as the State Wetland Protection Act. And then whether or not to add these additional interests. I think maybe aquaculture is one that's maybe just isn't necessary here, especially under the inland areas. That was pulled from another bylaw, so I think that's probably something that can be deleted. I don't know how 13 would relate to what we're doing, but it could potentially relate to performance standards in the regulations that we would establish. Specifically, I think, protection of topsoil and ground cover and forestation and those kind of things. So to minimize the amount of clearing that would occur on properties, something like that.
Yeah, and just I think too that there's other ways, that's an open-ended enough thing that as science progresses and as regulations progress, that might take on new meanings in the future.
Mhm.
I guess my question with that one would be, that would have to be within the buffer zone. We can't really go beyond the buffer zone.
Correct. Yep.
Would be clearing within the buffer zone
Right.
as opposed to the whole lot.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it could be one factor in your decision making as to whether or not a project has impacts or not.
So
and then-
okay, go ahead. Are we eliminating some of these? Or are we going to leave them all in? And I guess,
No, Bill, we're not gonna edit now. We're just gonna go through the decision points so people can chew on these
okay.
Yep.
on their own at home. And we can all email you if we think something, if we feel strongly about one thing or another.
Okay.
So the next category is just new resources that we want to potentially add to the bylaw that don't exist now under either state rules or our local bylaw. Vernal pools, as I said, are only protected if they occur in wetlands and if they're certified. So you could create a new category that specifically protects vernal pools, whether or not they're in a resource area or not. Isolated vegetated wetlands that meet a certain size criteria. Dan, I think 5,000 square feet is mentioned later on in this document. Maybe it's 2,500, maybe it's 1,000, maybe it's, but this is just the concept of whether or not we want to create a category of protection for isolated wetlands.
Yeah, Mary, so by doing this, we're kind of breaking away from the 310.
Yes, all of these
Definitions.
items would be new categories of protection that don't exist now under the Wetland Protection Act.
Yeah, they're not tethered to and they're not tethered because like right now, I think what Dan was saying is like an IVW by definition has to be 5,000 square feet to be jurisdictional. And now we're saying,
No,
right?
it doesn't
Sorry.
have, no, there is no IVW category in the existing
Right,
regulations.
Sorry, yeah.
It's, isolated land subject to flooding, and that's
Yep.
that's the 1/4 acre foot. So
Yeah,
there
that's
is
all.
there's no IVW category.
Question is there a definition section where those are more specified?
Yeah, further down. Yep.
Okay, some of that
So,
takes place there.
yes.
Should this say as defined herein? Otherwise,
Well, but you just go lower down in the document and it's got definitions.
right. But you want this to be jurisdictional, but so it'd have to be definition that's in our, because you say
Yes.
there's no IVW
Yes.
jurisdiction in the,
Yep.
all right. But as defined later on, okay.
Right.
Mary,
The other ones,
sorry, Bill.
all right.
Mary, can you quickly, is there like a succinct way that you can contrast having the ACEC here as opposed to where it was above in the special purposes? Or, having them both or not having them in one of the two places, like what we're getting or losing by making changes there?
Yeah. So you're creating, in the first one, you're just recognizing the Great Marsh ACEC is a significant feature the bylaw is intended to protect it as a significant feature. No, I'm not wording this right.
I guess
It's an
what I'm saying is,
interest. It's an interest of the act versus an actual resource area that's protected. One is just the function. You're protecting the function of Great Marsh ACEC. This one, you're actually creating a whole new resource category of ACEC. So it would be like bordering vegetated wetland or something. You'd say, okay, well, all the ACEC is a separate resource category, and we're going to have to write regulations for what you kind of can't do in or near it. Even if you're not in a wetland, even if you're in the ACEC that's in the upland, you know, if theoretically, if the ACEC occurred in an area that wasn't in a wetland or a buffer zone, it would still have jurisdiction under this bylaw, under this section here.
I think the Great Marsh ACEC does.
Yeah, it's sort of a standalone.
Not having it here doesn't prevent us from doing anything that we'd want to do, though, right?
No, I think you could still, you know, keep it in the
Special purpose.
earlier section, and still have the ability to recognize it under regulations.
Can I question? So what I'm hearing now is these are actually calling out these areas as resource areas, including the 100. This isn't a 100-foot buffer, jurisdictional buffer. It's actually saying land within 100 feet of the ACEC is a resource area in and of itself. Is that what I just heard?
Yeah, I mean, yes, you could do any one of these, or all three of them, or any combination. It's just sort of thrown out there as this is something else you could do. You can claim a buffer zone to any of these new resources, and you could also claim that the buffer is actually a resource itself.
Yeah.
Each one of, you know, you can see we're getting more and more like expanding the commission's geographic jurisdiction by doing this. So there has to be some consideration of that as well. If you're gonna start protecting additional resources, you're covering more land area. We're gonna have potentially, you know, more filings and everything else. So we want to be careful about how it's done, so that it's done in crafted in a way that is maximizing the amount of wetland protection you can get, but not making this writing it in a way that it won't have town support. So.
Yeah, and just to back up Mary's point, in a manner of speaking, the regulations and the science have somewhat nothing to do with each other. You know, with vernal pool habitat, you know, I think the last time I looked, they said something like the critters that use vernal pools may go up like 700 or 800 feet away from the vernal pool in the course of their life cycle. And so, you know, the regulation, a really, really restrictive vernal pool regulation that gets into 300 or 400 feet away from the vernal pool is still only going to cover half of the life cycle of the species we happen to be talking about. And so, you know, the balancing act is, you know, this is where the enemy of the perfect, you know, and the enemy of the good, you know, that kind of, those kind of metaphors, you have to keep in mind that something is better than nothing. Even if it's not really doing the job that you want it to do.
I'm just going to throw out a couple comments, and I'm not, you know, I'm not sure if I'm thinking correctly or not, but I kind of like the bylaws that don't call out isolated vegetative wetlands. They just say all wetlands. And I'm kind of wondering about the 100-foot around these resource areas as a resource area in of itself, or just a buffer zone. I mean, I think I was confused about that.
Yep.
I think
I think it gets really confusing to regulate and accept projects, and when everything is in a resource area, like if every time you have a notice of intent, it's for alteration of a resource area if the buffer zone is a resource area. It becomes, it sort of becomes, I don't know, it just becomes difficult to continue to regulate projects that way when everything is basically a waiver.
Yeah.
It's not really it's not a good way to set up the regulations. I think going beyond 100 feet is going to be very, very difficult.
No, I think what
any
I
kind
was
of a buffer
suggesting,
zone.
I think what I was suggesting is 4 might be subject to a jurisdictional buffer of 100 feet, or, where the buffer zone itself would not be a resource area. That's
Yeah.
more what we have with it currently, right?
Right. So having a buffer zone to the ACEC it doesn't seem, I don't know, that, in my opinion, I don't think I'd be in favor of that. The ACEC goes to about elevation 10. It's already encompassing some upland
Some
area,
uplands, yeah.
basically. So it's probably unnecessary.
Maybe encapsulating something like, I think this is encapsulating like a lot of what we're all saying from various ways, is that, Mary, would it be useful to think about a special purpose that says something along the lines of protecting ecological functions of wetlands? And that gives us the flexibility through regulation to do what we think is right in buffer zones. Like Brian was kind of talking about, bring in what we can look at and know about different types of buffer zones and different types of support they're providing for the species around them. So it gives us it doesn't create a resource area, which I think that your concern is valid for that, where it's not like we're calling everything a resource area, and it kind of covers some of other people's concerns, but it gives us the flexibility moving forward to craft regulations that accomplish what we all want to accomplish.
Well, so that goes back to the purpose. And so I could see maybe adding that into.
That's what I was saying, is instead of like doing the buffer zones, going back and adding another point to the purpose, is saying one of the purposes of this bylaw is to protect the ecological function of a wetland.
Yep, that makes sense.
Does that, Dan, and Brian, does that address some of what you're saying, or no?
I've got all questions, no answers, so.
But that's normal.
Yeah, I'm used to being there.
Ben, I like the way you're thinking. I like the idea. I don't know how that's going to play out, in terms of how the language gets, put together. But I like the concept. Obviously, well, I always talk about the logics that we see. So if there was a way to make these regulations a little bit more scientifically based as opposed to, just opinion based. Yeah, I'd be down with that. I just don't know how the language would work. I don't know if other towns have tried similar things to try to be more peer-reviewed savvy as opposed to,
I'll try and think about better ways to word it, and I can send those to Bill Holt, and then we can. And if you want to do the same, or Mary wants to do the same, please do, and then we can have a list of suggestions if people think it's worthwhile.
Cool. Keep rolling, then. What's our next point for decision making?
I don't think that the 952.1 regulated activities is terribly controversial. That most of the just describing the kinds of activities that would be subject to review. Anything that somebody would do in a resource area or buffer zone. So if anybody has anything that they want to add to this, another activity that might not necessarily, that we might not be covering, but this is all standard language from model bylaws. So it should be pretty inclusive.
Folks, I have to go put my son to bed.
Say hi to Roland.
I will. He was all excited earlier. He's like, "Oh, it's Brian! It's Brian! Look!"
What can I say? I'm pretty.
Yeah, sure, totally. All right, y'all. Have a great night.
Good night.
Right, Ben.
Thanks, Ben.
Hey, Ben.
While Bill and Mary are scrolling, looking at decision points, Peter, Kevin, Bill, you guys doing okay? You following along all right? You're staying kind of quiet in the background here.
I think it's, I think Bill's original suggestion of look at this and, maybe give comments by Friday, I think is the way to go with this.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of thought and consideration has gone into this, and any comments that, people have, just jot them off to Bill so he can, assimilate them, and then we can look at them in another week or two. I think that makes the most sense of time. The points have been explained, and that's the most helpful component.
Okay.
Bill, can you scroll back down again to the definitions, the new definitions there?
Up or down?
Right there, right there.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Nope. Back a little bit more. The other way.
Back.
There we go. Right there.
Oops.
Thanks.
Other way.
Somebody had asked earlier, I think, Dan, whether we had definitions for the potential new resource areas. Those are the 3 new resource areas that were potential to be added. And number 8, vernal pool habitat, we're saying shall mean any, this is the starting point as a potential definition is a vernal pool that's certified by the state. Maybe we want to change that if we do choose to have a vernal pool resource, that we want to expand that to be vernal pools that, even if they're not certified by the state, but that otherwise meet the definitions that are set by the state. That's one example of a change you could make.
And should we, looking at number 10, and just linking to specific publications, could we just say, as set forth by, I kind of lost my spot, but rather say publication from 1989, if they happen to change the definition or something like that,
Yes, you would get, yeah, or more recent map or something, yeah.
Yeah.
Wait.
Something like that.
Mhm.
I had a more eloquent comment, but then I lost my Massachusetts Coastal Zone Management as set forth by Massachusetts Coastal Zone Management, and just leave it at that, not citing the specific publication.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Most recent version.
Yep.
Yeah. Just so we don't have to go back through and change these things
I
again.
guess the problem happens if they stop publishing it.
Right.
That'd be most
You
recent
just have
version.
to give,
Yeah.
you just have to give the public, direction as to where to find the information to.
Yeah. But I think if
Right.
it's in the
Determine what it
association that we're
is.
basing it off of,
Yeah.
I think they can go to that association and figure it out.
Mhm. Yep.
And,
I
oh,
think
this is a
some
bylaw.
places, some bylaws, they actually provide the elevation,
Yes.
which could be done here.
I think it's all elevation 10 in Newbury, I believe.
I think it is, yeah.
Whatever it is in NGVD and AVD now. It's
Yeah, that's true. It's, yeah,
like 9.2 or something.
Yeah.
yep, it's
9.2.
changed, yep.
Yep.
Just one thing I'd say about the vernal pool, number 8, is, the whole procedure to, kind of, you got something that looks like a vernal pool. How is the burden is on the applicant to prove that it's not, and then there's like a whole procedure there that's pretty complex, and with being regulations, but
Right.
it's kind of, I think something would have to change there in order to, you'd have to say whether they're certified by Fish and Wildlife or not. subject to, Newbury wetland regulations.
I think that the Fish and Wildlife has pretty good certification criteria. But the problem is that obviously if somebody files for a particular piece of land and that pool isn't known by Fish and Wildlife or hasn't been certified, then it doesn't get the protection. So that I think we can use their same certification criteria and just say it's protected even if it is not certified at the time of filing.
But it will be onerous to kind of come up with a fair procedure to, go from A to B on, well, here's something that looks like a vernal pool. Now it's up to you, the applicant, to.
Right.
I mean, there's one regulation I looked at that they even go so far as to say if it's not, you can only really tell during the springtime.
Yep.
And you got to wait. Sorry.
Yep. I've been in that position several times.
It's not, I don't know if that's fair but there's, that's a whole nother.
Right. So the applicant has the option of designing a project, assuming that it is a vernal pool and designing it accordingly and instead of waiting. If they want to wait and try to prove negative, which is hard to do, they would have to do it in the spring.
And I don't think this go around, we've mentioned the 5,000 square feet, maybe we have, but that could be subject to change.
Yep.
9.
And number 9, yeah, yep.
And I don't have a real strong feeling, except that maybe that 5,000 isn't enough.
Well, 5,000, it would have to be a minimum of 5,000 to be jurisdictional under that language.
Right, and I think.
And you think it should be less.
Should be smaller.
Right, and we can certainly make it smaller. I think it does help to have a minimum size criteria, so we're not regulating, little puddles and things that, or little tiny little stumps and things like that don't really have much wetland function and don't really deserve a 100-foot buffer zone. So that's my take on it. It should be a significant enough size to justify the buffer zone that it's going to attach to it.
I don't know if there's a way to kind of craft it so that stuff that looks like an isolated wetland, that maybe you just deal with isolated wetlands, establish that, yes, you're going to have some kind of erosion control and other protections around an isolated wetland, just like you would for an upland. I mean, that's not.
Yep.
For a normal UVW. Yep.
We might want to also exclude certain structures, man-made features, stormwater features, stormwater basins, and things like that, so that there's no potential that they would be interpreted as being included.
So maybe these are things we can think about and kind of.
I think that's probably as far as we can get tonight.
Yeah.
I think that was about it for me.
I think there's not much after that.
Yeah.
Let's turn over through it real quick. See what else. Yeah, I think that's really it.
Perfect. So then let's come up with a plan. How about let's say Friday, just so that we do it instead of staying on much. By Friday, send commentary to Bill. And if you don't say anything about it, we are going to assume that you are okay with it the way it is. And then that way, Bill, if none of us say something about some of these points, he knows that he's clear on those, and we can take these things down, and we actually can sort of stick to the real conversation points. And then next week, Bill Holt can reply back to us to let us know what conversation points are. We really need to sort of chew on some more. And then we can go from there. Does that sound doable, reasonable, etc.?
Yep. If you
Okay.
send it as a Word document with track changes, can we do it that way or?
You can do it any way you want, as long as it goes to Bill. You know, and then Bill Holt, I think, take Mary's suggestion, you know, if you can, before the meeting next week, and just sort of accept all changes where you can, and then track change and call out in a new color, maybe the things that we really do need to talk about. You know, you can add in the comments from the various commissioners to comment on the sidebar, and you know, something to that effect before the meeting. I think we'll be good.
We lost you, Brian.
Yeah, it's breaking up a little bit. I think I get the point.
Yeah. Close enough. You got it. All right. So then, who wants to go do something else?
I just have a quick question. For the month of February, I'm going to be sporadic attendance and whatnot. And I'd hate to have meetings happen where, you know, other people can't make it. We're expecting a baby February 2nd. Thank you. So I don't know if like, I just would hate to like not be able to get a quorum and knowing that I probably won't be there for a meeting in February. I didn't know if there's like a leave of absence, so it doesn't count towards the total number of commissioners or something. I don't know. I was just trying to think of a way to avoid that, or we might not think it's an issue with the amount of members we have.
I think you're safe. I appreciate the concern, but this just means that, you know, Bill Lord, you know, has to show up this coming up month. He got January off, but now he's covering for you for February.
All right, fair enough. So don't expect any meetings. I'll try to make it if I can, but don't expect me.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
More important things.
Yeah.
Is there a site walk that was scheduled that I missed earlier in the evening?
There's the one on Saturday at 10 a.m. at 61 Elm Street.
Okay.
And at that location and time, I'd like to have that enforcement order signed if we can, by 4 members at least.
I won't be able to make that. I have a inspection scheduled. I'm working.
I might have some difficulty.
I'm out too.
Oh.
Well, you have to come in and sign it then. Come in and talk to Gretchen. She'll have it ready.
I might have some difficulty with that time on Saturday too.
I move to close the meeting.
I'll second that. Yeah.
Me too.
Right, roll call. Bill.
Yes.
All right. Daniel.
Yes.
I heard a yes, I think. Okay. Kevin.
Yes.
Mary.
Yes.
Peter.
Yes, I think so. Thank you.
I'll also vote to close the meeting. Thank you, everyone. That you know, good. I appreciated it a lot, Mary. That was wonderful. So yeah, well done, everybody. Thank you.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
All right.
Good night.